Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening to our friends in the UK who are several hours ahead of us. Thank you so much for joining us today for this interactive virtual engagement that's being facilitated by Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. It has been a while since the Prime Minister interacted with our fellow men and women in the diaspora, and despite the many changes forced upon the world today, he was quite keen to have this engagement. Therefore, here we are today. Welcome to everyone in the United States, Canada, the UK, and wherever else in the diaspora you may be. I must acknowledge the various media entities that have collaborated with us to ensure that this activity reaches a maximum audience. In Grenada, we have GIS, of course, Real FM, CRFM, Sister Al Radio, and Mikey Live. In the US, there's We in Noise Radio, 94.9 FM, Crossroad Family Radio, 105.5 FM, New Radio, 99.3 FM, and J Wonder FM, all in New York. We also have in the US Ride Along and Diaspora Matters using the Facebook platform. In the UK, we have Unique Radio, 101.2 FM, and Colourful Radio, which is accessible online at colourful.com. And last but not least, in Canada, we are live on the TV program Caribbean Vibrations. Thank you again to one and all for joining. In everything we do, we ought to put God first. Therefore, our first order of business today will be an opening prayer by Mr. Martin Scott. Good afternoon, Mr. Scott. It appears that Mr. Scott may not yet be with us, so I'll call on his nephew, Nimrod Oliver. Nimrod, can you lead us in prayer, please?
Heaven and eternal Father, Lord God, as we gather here today to get news from our homeland, I pray, Lord, that you may bless us, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you may bless the bearers of the message that we are about to receive. Father God, even though it's virtual, I pray at the end of the meeting you may take us back home safely, wherever we may have to be. I pray for a beautiful nation, Lord, and I pray, Lord, that you may help as we get through this pandemic. This I ask in Jesus' name.
Thank you, Brother Oliver, for inviting the presence of the Lord as we embark on this engagement. Today's activity is intended to bring you up to date on what's happening in Grenada generally, and specifically as it relates to COVID-19. Therefore, I now invite Dr. Taisha Donnell, Medical Director at the General Hospital, to brief us on the COVID-19 situation in Grenada. Dr. Donnell?
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Honorable Prime Minister, Press Secretary Ms. Philomena Robertson, persons in the diaspora, our media, all, good afternoon. So this afternoon, I'd like to give you an idea of what's happening in Grenada at the moment in relation to our COVID-19 pandemic and our recent community spread. At the moment, Grenada had a total of 5,591 cumulative cases. Happy to report that at the moment we have only 386 active cases. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had a steady decrease in the number of cases island-wide. In terms of recoveries, recent recoveries, we've had 247 recent recoveries, and this would have been over the last 24 hours, and we're very happy to report that. In terms of our hospital services, we've had a record low number of cases from since our start of this community spread. We have a total of 31 cases at the General Hospital, a total of 9 cases at the Princess Alice Hospital, and 1 case at the Princess Royal Hospital. A total of 41 cases within our hospital services. And this is a significant improvement from us being generally between the 50 to 65 range. And we are happy to say that now we have a record low number of cases from since our start of the community spread. In terms of vaccination, we want to report that we have over 26,000 persons fully vaccinated. Of course, fully means they have their first and second dose, but partially vaccinated, we have over 9,300 persons. So Grenada right now, we're still trying to push forward the agenda of vaccination for our population, and we're working really hard toward that cause. We want to say that this has been a very difficult time for us, and of course, we like to speak of the positives. But in terms of the deaths that we have had, we want to note that over 95% of the cases that died were unvaccinated. And this is of note, and this is something we really want persons to acknowledge. In terms of the cases that were fully vaccinated, it was just a mere 2.9%. And of course, this is not where we would like to be. So today, we will speak about going forward, how can we, assist in terms of curbing this spread. At our hospital services, we have been very, very happy, and we have felt very, very much elated at the level of love and support that we've gotten from members of the diaspora. We've received many donations, we've received technical support, and we even had some, foot on the ground, as we would say, and for that we appreciate it. At the moment, again, we're working toward trying to decrease our numbers further to go back to where we were a few weeks ago. We're working toward vaccination of our population and, of course, offering the best possible care for persons within our hospital services. And we're also working toward improving the care at the level of our community services with better monitoring, better surveillance, which would improve the general outcome of patients, the patients who would get to our hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Donald, for that update on the situation as it relates to COVID-19 in Grenada. It has been a long road to get to where we are, but we are on the right track, and we certainly have to hope that we continue in that vein. And I want to echo the thanks that you mentioned to persons in the diaspora for the significant support that we have gotten. At this point, I would invite to the microphone Prime Minister, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell?
Yeah, thank you, Philomena, and of course to Medical Director, Dr. Donald, who is here with us today on this important engagement, and to my dear brothers and sisters in the UK, the United States, Canada, and other parts of the diaspora that might be on Facebook or being streaming this important event. And of course, our friends in Canada, sisters and brothers all, those of you in Grenada, on the various media houses, and of course, streaming this important event also. Let me first say that I am extremely happy that we are having this engagement at this time. I think the fact that the technology has been available for us to use while we are distant away from each other, the technology can bring us as if we are close. And I think COVID-19 has done one positive thing. It has certainly demonstrated or make us understand the use of technology and how we could be doing things better and more efficiently with less cost to all of us. So I look forward to this type of engagement in a more regular basis, not just in time like this, like we have with COVID-19, but in a general atmosphere where we can share issues related to what is happening in our country as far as development is concerned. To our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, let me make this point to say to you that we have always valued the contribution of our brothers and sisters out there. As most of you probably would know, I myself was a member of the diaspora way back, and I know how important it was then whenever I had the opportunity to make contact with my brothers and sisters in the mainland. So I look forward to this engagement, and I look forward to your questions, ideas, concerns, and clearly we look forward to this event in every aspect. We have received consistent support over the years in many initiatives on several fronts. In education, for example, the support of the diaspora personnel in terms of providing materials, books, computers, equipment, furniture, and support for the school system. Our diaspora brothers and sisters have been consistent. We have received help for support for the police force from several fronts. We have received equipment for the security forces outside of just the normal services that I mentioned earlier on. So we have always valued this, the availability and support for fire services. We have got help for those also. In the area of culture, the consistent events in the cultural field in several parts of the world, in UK, in Canada, Grenadians in New York, Miami, and several parts of the diaspora. Cultural events featuring our diaspora personnel have promoted the country in a positive way, generally speaking. We also, especially in this time, but over the years, we have had serious support in the healthcare services, for materials for the general hospital, medicine, equipment, and so many things we have got from the diaspora community abroad, which we continue to congratulate our brothers and sisters on. But especially in this time, I think it's important to record, as I've said to the nation and several times in speaking to on national addresses, that Grenadians have a way when they have difficulties, they find ways of beating it and successfully, and even getting back better than where we were. Those of you who remember Ivan, the destruction of Ivan, where the country was flattened. Most people did not think that Grenada could recover in 10 years. That was the prediction. Within 2 years, we were back up and running. And it could not have been with the support of any just one group, the government by itself, or we had a national support from Grenadians at home and abroad. Generally speaking, the collective support of the people of the country has always been the hallmark of this. And when this COVID-19 occurred, when the spread occurred, we called on the nation, as everyone, to use the same collective approach that we use for things like Ivan and Emily and Janet and so on. We asked people to put aside our differences that we have, whether it's cultural, political, religious, put that aside. Join hands together, because COVID-19 is not a joke. They're talking about life and death. And therefore, we ask people to come forward and support. We have seen a tremendous amount of of support from the diaspora community. Some Grenadian medical personnel have left their jobs abroad in many parts of the diaspora community and came home and gave a couple weeks of service. Some are here longer than a couple weeks and giving services, nurses, doctors, other persons involved in the healthcare system, psychologists, and so on. They have made themselves available, and we want to record our deepest appreciation on behalf of the country as a whole for that sort of continuous support. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has overreaching responsibility, as we all know, for strengthening the linkage with nationals abroad, like volunteers living abroad, and the intention is to mobilize and leverage our diaspora resources for the development of Grenada, CARICOM, PG, Martinique. The embassies and missions abroad have been very active in terms of connecting with the community and doing what they can to promote and help the country, especially in this very difficult time. The Office of Diaspora Affairs has been set up to spearhead the initiative in several areas. The office will work closely in coordination with ministries, government units, and other persons and organizations in the diaspora and at home. The initiative is receiving support from the UN International Organization for Migration through a mapping component designed to learn more about the socio-economic profile of the Grenadian diaspora. Through a collaboration project with the International Organization for Migration, we have completed a diaspora mapping project and a skills gap analysis to address local needs, to fill gaps and strengthen existing capacities throughout the length and breadth of the country. A remittance and investment workshop conference was held in July 2021, and policy ideas are being analyzed for submission to Cabinet. The diaspora, therefore, is considered by this government as a critical partner for Grenada's national development through remittances and other serious areas of support. My friends, our action plan has also been developed focusing on 5 thematic areas, namely health, education, technical skills, network, investment, trade, and youth development, and of course, tourism. To expand a little on this area in health, the intent is to deliver a system of operational activities and materials geared towards strengthening our healthcare system. Also, we expect investment and trade, the facilitating business development through entrepreneurial activities and partnership. A particular focus in youth to include a strategy for second and third generation engagement is one of the key aspects in sustaining a diaspora connection and advocating and promoting Grenada's interests. Our own Dr. Donald, who is here with me, has eloquently articulated, as you've just heard, the COVID-19 situation on the ground in Grenada. The downward trend we have been seeing is certainly a welcome one, and one we would like to see, we want to see continue. But we cannot drop our guard. It is important more than ever that we follow the protocols to ensure that we keep the rate of infection low. Our health experts say COVID-19 is here to stay, and therefore we have to adapt and find a way to live with it. I want to make this point here. As we all know, because of a lot of misinformation, a lot of false theories coming from people, some people regionally and internationally, and even in Grenada, that should know better. It's provided a lot of confusion to the ordinary folks in our country, and has slowed what our expectation is as far as vaccination and, of course, wearing a mask and protecting oneself. My own feeling is, sisters and brothers from abroad, and I appeal also consistently to friends or brothers and sisters here, every one of us has a responsibility. I keep saying each one of us is a leader in that respect. The government leadership will do what it can, and we've been doing what we can. But we need every sector. We need the medical association here to speak out more firmly on this important matter, because they are fundamental to this in this respect. We need all sectors of the society to do the same thing. The business community, a good measure of them, but we could do with more members of the business community in speaking to their workers and speaking to the country about this important issue of this pandemic, because the pandemic is affecting business directly. So everyone is affected by this, not just the health persons. So it seems to me if everyone is affected, everyone should therefore be involved in this process of spreading the word and of course doing what we can to get our brothers and sisters to understand the need to protect themselves. Therefore, in that context, I say to my brothers and sisters abroad, most of you have friends and family here. Most of you, from what I understand, in the UK, over 80% of the people have been vaccinated. I would assume that 80% include 80% of Grenadian nationals and Caribbean nationals in New York. Similarly, in the United States, most of the people, more than 50%, going to 60% now, are vaccinated. So we expect, every time a Grenadian comes here, the first thing I ask them, have you been vaccinated? And I have not met one Grenadian who has returned here who told me that they have not been vaccinated. It means, therefore, since you are understanding of the necessity, it seems to me you have to preach the word to your brothers and sisters in mainland. A phone call. We have Zoom now, we have all sorts of video, Skype, we have all sorts of communication network available. You can be there in New York, you could be there in Miami, you could be there in Port of Spain, you could be there in London, in Toronto, in Montreal, and speaking to your brothers and sisters here and letting them know. Too many false theories. I've never been more shocked in my entire political life to hear the level of mindset that comes out from people's mouth as far as protecting themselves. You're telling an individual about protecting his own life, not your life, your life. And he's then arguing with me about why he should not be vaccinated. This is quite fascinating. I've never seen anything like this. I have had people attempt to educate me why I should not be vaccinated. Could you imagine this? In a time that people are dying left, right, and center in the country. So, my friends, Dr. Donald has clearly outlined our needs at this time. We need everything we can get. The PPE, certainly we can't have shortage of this. Things are trending downwards, but I am never going to feel any sense of comfort yet. I can't. Because we had a sense of comfort for almost a year and something. We wanted leading country in the Caribbean, in the world, as far as protecting our society. And I was warning over and over, warning our people that don't take things for granted, that we can overnight. Because we had a lot of examples where countries were doing well overnight. There were serious problems as far as the health services were concerned and the sickness and death of people in the population. So where we are today, Dr. Donald indicated that yes, the community spread has now hit Grenada for one reason or the other. And we are where we are. So playing Monday morning quarterbacking is not necessarily the ideal thing at this time. We are where we are, and the famous quote, it is what it is. Many of you would have heard that quote at other levels. So we have to deal with it now. Question is going forward and doing what we can, and we need the collective support of everyone. and the Ministry of Health staff, led by the Minister of Health, Minister Steele, and Minister Delma Thomas, who is directly in charge of hospital services, Mrs. St. Paul, they're all working together, the hospital director, all the nurses, the doctors. I can't say all, I'm never going to sit here and be hypocrite enough to say that everyone in the medical field. And there's some here in Grenada that have not pulled their weight, and we're asking everyone to do so. So I'm making the point. They're working hard. Sometimes I feel a sense of guilt to watch them risk their lives when others are not prepared to join them in that struggle. But I want to take the opportunity to thank them and compliment them. And they're not just the doctors and the nurses, the orderlies, the cooks, the ordinary security guards, because sometimes we only look at certain levels in a service. I tell people over and over, friends, that the guy who cleans the street, the garbage collector, he's a critical person. He or she's a critical person in this fight of COVID-19. For he does not clean the streets and play his role, then we'll have far more difficulty in the environmental problems, which is clearly correlated with the attempt at getting more of this virus in our country. So, on this note, I know that the diaspora people are hungry to give your views and to ask questions and so on. I feel I've said enough, but I just want to say once again, to say I'm extremely pleased. My Saturday is usually a time for, after I went through all the communities today, Dr. Don and our team were in St. David's, and I did a tour of all the vaccination sites around the country. I ended up with about 6 of them until I reached St. Andrews and came back down to prepare myself for this important event. But I said Saturday is usually my only day. I do some relaxing in the afternoon, visit my mom and others in the community. My mom, who's going to be 99 next year, and so on. So I love to go and sit with her, and we go through stories. She always has stories to give you that you can't never stop at 99. But I gave it up. I gave that up for this important session here today because I really value the contribution and the advice and ideas and support of members of our diaspora community. So friends, thank you for your presence, and I look forward to your complete participation.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for those opening comments. Members of the diaspora, as the Prime Minister has indicated, the time is now for you to engage him, whether it be questions, seeking clarity on something, general feedback, comments, whatever it is, the floor, and ideas too, as we seek to get through this crisis. So that the floor is now open for that level of feedback. But just before we start, I'd want to address some matters of housekeeping. All microphones are muted, but once we indicate that you're invited to speak, you will see a message from the host. So please accept that, which will unmute your microphone, and then you can proceed with your question or comment this afternoon. We have several persons on the call, and we'd want to make sure that we give equal opportunity. So we'll restrict the questions to 1 per person at this time. Try to be very concise in your questions. Avoid any long preamble, just so that we can get to as many persons as possible this afternoon. Okay, I think that's all in terms of housekeeping. Let us just try to be respectful of all. I see a number of hands raised here. I will take Michelle first. Michelle, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking my question first. I just want to state I'm a lawyer who's actually from Canada, but working remotely in Grenada now. And I wanted to just state that I think Grenada is trying its best to stay on top of this. And in Toronto at our Catholic Community Church, we created a really great forum. So this is more of an offer than a question. We created an excellent forum with Caribbean doctors and other medical professionals where we answered a lot of the questions about vaccinations, mixing vaccines. Can you get vaccinated when you're pregnant, when you're breastfeeding? All of these questions were actually answered. And in Toronto, Canada, we're at about 85 to 90% vaccination rate. So what my question is, could you use this information? Because a lot of times Caribbean folks are hearing information from non-Black, non-Caribbean doctors, and they just don't trust it. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're seeing in Grenada is just a lot of mistrust and misinformation just flying all over the place. And it really helped our community get on board. And we had a huge influx of vaccines right after that. So I'm happy to share that. That was my question. Would you like it?
Yes, I think we would be happy to share in in this initiative because one of the issues we've had in Grenada is that of social media and misconceptions regarding vaccination. So a lot of persons have different ideas and reasons why they should not be vaccinated. So hearing it coming from persons within our group or coming from persons in the diaspora who are Grenadians or are Caribbean persons as well, it should help help share that message. Because right now we're really focusing on that message out there to get that message for persons to get vaccinated. So we'll be happy to share with that.
Thank you. I'll send my email address into the group chat and then you can email me back and I'll send it over. Thank you.
Yes, Michelle, don't go. I just want to make this point. I think what you're talking about and offering is extremely important for us. But I think it's also critical. We are, in our society, it's different from the society of North America, the makeup of the society. Here we have to have almost more hand-to-hand combat. I've had, and I know a number of members of parliament and a number of persons have had to go and sit down, literally sit down with people and explain to them why, without that they're not going. They're simply not going because they're listening to the TV. They hear all the stories about what's happening in Canada. They've seen people dying on the ICU units all across the world. But they see millions of people, right? Millions of people die of COVID-19 but for not being vaccinated. But they just had to hear one person get sick because they're vaccinated. They don't know the circumstances. And that's what they latch on to, which is a strange phenomenon. If the statistics says 99%, in Grenada, 95% of the people that have in fact died because of COVID-19 are unvaccinated. Only 2% are those who vaccinated, and most likely are people that have serious underlying problems. A lot of medical problems that even vaccine don't seem to be able to save. Mm-hmm. Why you don't want to be in the statistics of 90, 95, and 99%? Why do you want to be in the category of 2.9%? It frightens me, that logic.
And so if I may, I think you're doing a fantastic job. I want to say that as a Canadian, even
yes.
before I came. I really think this is knocking it out of the park. Yes. And Grenadians, you're right. This is baby steps, and you have to really meet with people where they're at, and they have to hear it from someone that they believe in. And if they don't, they're not going to touch it. So as people are dying, you're seeing people kind of wake up, and it's sad that it took that, but I just wanted to say, I think hang in there. I think you're doing a great job.
Michelle, thank you. And whatever you can do and encourage others to do whatever they can do, we deeply appreciate it. We need all the help we can get. I'm telling you this.
Thank you very much, Michelle. One other housekeeping point. When you have the microphone, please identify yourself by full name and which part of the diaspora you're joining us from. So I think up next we have Lisselle. Lisselle, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lisselle, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
So good afternoon. My name is Lyselle Joseph. I am part of the U.S. Diaspora. I have a question. I'm not sure who's best to answer it. So several organizations have been coordinating together with the Office of Diaspora Affairs and Ambassador James to send donations and help to Grenada. And we've come together and we're really logging that and keeping track of what the needs are and who is sending things so that we don't duplicate efforts. And my question is there anything like that happening on the ground? So when donations come into the hospital warehouse, or what kind of inventory do you have in place there to track things, to track burn rates? And is there any way that we can support in doing that to make sure that the things that are needed are provided quickly?
Lyselle, you said? Lyselle Joseph? And you are in New York, right? Did I hear you right? Okay. The diaspora community or organization or division falls under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and there is an understanding of a system and structure for the question of acquisition of support at the level of the diaspora community. So they work closely together, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will work closely, and have been working closely with the Ministry of Health. So the question of what is needed and what is delivered and what is asked for comes through that organized system. And therefore, Dr. Donald would be able to give you an idea of some of the things that's already been happening. We want to make sure, because some people have been calling and said, well, people are raising, asking for donation, in some cases funds, in some cases equipment. We want to be very careful. It has to be centralized, because we don't want any group or persons just outside there trying to use a very badly needed situation for their own personal gains. So the system is extremely important, and that is available. Working Diaspora Division within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs work closely with the administrative leadership in the ministry and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also the Ministry of Health. Dr. Donald?
Thank you. So, Ms. Joseph, yes, we have a master list of our needs, and this list was shared with the diaspora and persons out there who have been willing to do donations to assist us here in Grenada. So we have a master list, and as we receive donations, we do a log, we do a tally. It goes through our procurement unit. They're the ones who do the distribution. So based on the numbers of, the number of things that we have, we would cross off some of the needs of our master list. So we have things that we would have already eliminated from our master list. And so I guess the best thing would be for persons to be, who need to know what our needs are, to use that same list. All right, one central list, which can be circulated to all the different organizations. And as we are able to eliminate different items from the list, we would just update the list as we go along. And yes, we have a system to monitor it. As I said, as items come in, we log them, we share it with our donation desk. It goes to the procurement department. They do the distributions, and then we go from there. So that's the system we have in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go now to Professor Charles. Good afternoon to you, sir. You should see a message from the host, so just accept that. Good.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, my question, I'm George Charles from in Detroit, Michigan, Pure, Michigan. I'm the purest one in here, Pure Grenada and Pure, Michigan. My question is, if COVID continue to spread, has the Prime Minister considered using the different housing unit for quarantining the people? Because I know that our houses are small and we have multi-generation living in the houses. That's my question.
Well, I think a key thing is we clearly would have sort of isolation if this situation continues beyond the present ability to control it where we are. then we'll have to use some isolation centers. And that some preparation work is being done. But of course, if you want to have an isolation center, you'd have to equip it, of course, in a way that it is a proper isolation center, provide all the necessary support system, and have the staffing available. So all that is being looked at, and hopefully we won't need it, but if we have to prepare, because certainly we never were expecting to have that surge that we had 5-6 weeks ago as far as community spread were concerned. But we were able to control it to some extent, but I tell you, it did put a lot of stress level on the entire system and the workforce as a whole. Dr. Arnold, you want to add anything to this?
Yes, so this is one of the topics we've discussed over the last few weeks, up to this week, that of having an isolation unit separate from the hospital services. So we're actually putting together a proposal for that, so that we can have an area where all the positive persons can be housed. And of course, it have to be divided based on the level of illness, so the mild, moderate, and severe. So this is something we're working on right now. And of course, it's a big project. We've identified a potential location. However, we have to look at the human resource and the material resource. So we're in that process of putting together the listing of all the material resource and human resource that is needed to man a center like that. Because it will take a lot to man that center, because apart from the hospital services, we would have to have separate staffing to take care of that area. But it is something that, based on this experience that we've had, we've recognized that it's something that's very much needed. And as I said, we're putting together a proposal already. We've actually made quite a bit of progress with that. So as soon as we have that in order, it's something that we could share with the diaspora.
Thank you.
Henson, it's your turn. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. We can hear you loud and clear. Please proceed with identifying yourself and which part of the diaspora you're in, and go ahead with your comment or question.
Right. Well, my name is Ensign Williams. I'm calling from London, the UK. Right. I know I'm just limited to one question, but I would pose this question to the Prime Minister, our Honorable Prime Minister, and the medical lady. Now, Israel has mandated the vaccine for the majority of the population, probably 80% to 85%, and also the Seychelles. Now, there's been a devastating outbreak of COVID-19 in these two places, the highest in the world. How would you address that, please?
My brother, I'm not sure that information is correct based on my own knowledge. There have been maybe some break in as far as the virus is concerned, but I'm not sure it's a high proportion. It must be a small. The numbers I've heard at the level of government is a small breakthrough of persons who are vaccinated, but the vaccine have certainly worked and have kept people safe. That has been my reaction, because I don't know that we have seen the statistics all over the world, every single country, we have had that. And so far, I've seen football matches in the UK. I watch, as you know, I'm a sports person, enthusiast, and I watch the Premier League. I watch as a former cricketer myself. I watch T20 and Test cricket with thousands and thousands of people. But if you get into the stands, you have to be vaccinated. And I'm going to say that here today. Right now we are carded for the third test match between England and the West Indies in March next year. And we know that thousands of visitors from England follow the team. And we are going to use that as almost as a attempt to reopen the tourism product in Grenada for 2022. And we are going to insist that anyone who goes into that stand at Queen's Park will have to be fully vaccinated. And therefore, we're telling people from now, tickets will only be sold to vaccinated people. So I'm not sure. I don't know if Dr. Hon have any information different from I have, my brother, but I certainly have not heard any such major devastating breakthrough of infection in Israel and the Seychelles. I have not heard that at all. In fact, I heard the complete opposite. So if I'm wrong, then I have to be educated accordingly.
So, Mr. Williams, yes. So, in terms of vaccination and breakthroughs, the data throughout the world has been comparable. So, in terms of the US, UK, Europe, the Caribbean, we've seen the same pattern of persons who are unvaccinated, persons who tend to do better in terms of illness, in terms of recoveries. The unvaccinated population generally are the ones who will, develop more severe illness, and the persons who are more likely to succumb to the illness. So the data has been more or less the same throughout the world. And I mean, we've been sharing data among all the different areas, the US, UK, Caribbean, Europe, and really and truly it has been the same. I cannot speak directly to the data from Seychelles, but all of the studies that I've looked at and all of the little excerpts of what's happening in all the different countries that I've read, the pattern is the same. And this is actually one of our talking points in terms of promoting vaccination among our population as well.
I think it's important, Brother Williams, to mention there have been several cases that have been brought to my attention here in my own country, and I'm sure you're hearing it abroad too, where in a household of 5 and 6 persons, most people have refused to be vaccinated. I'm talking about certain households. The one person or 2 persons that have been vaccinated, the virus is caught by one person. Every single one of those that are unvaccinated caught the virus. But the 2 that are vaccinated, mixing with the individual. In one case, a husband sleeping with his wife, she is full with the infection, coughing, and when he goes to be tested, he tested negative. That is not to say if you're vaccinated, you may not have it, but there is a high level of control or what you would say, a protection for persons who are vaccinated. So I think that's a generally accepted philosophy, and I hope and pray that people do understand this and to be vaccinated as much as possible.
Can I speak, Prime Minister?
Sure.
Well, it's been well documented that Israel previously was not letting anybody into the country that was unvaccinated.
Yes.
But it's now the reverse because of the adverse effects that they've been having in Israel. It's well documented. I don't speak off the top of my head. I'm somebody that I've been doing research from I was a very young man in my late teens. So there's a lot of information that I've got. So that basically is what my opinions are based on. It's based on facts and not hearsay. It's all documented. Anything I say, it's all documented.
Okay. Brother William, all I can say is that it seems like every one of us is not aware about your facts. And it seems like the world generally that we listen to and I'm part of. Right now, Brother Williams, I'm chairman of the organization of the OECS states. I'm president chairman, and we get data from every single part of the world. And there's no such information. So I'm not accusing you, my brother, of having false information. It's just that it is very strange that you have this information and no one else in the entire Caribbean, in the entire OECS, all the leaders, all the citizens of the OECS can in fact speak to that, with that fact. That's all I'm saying. I can't say that you are giving false information. I just want to be careful because other people are listening to you, and if it is turn out to be factual, then clearly we have to be careful. But if it turns out to be true, and I'm not saying that you are deliberately giving false information, I want to be very careful about that, then it could mislead people and cause them not to be vaccinated, and that would be a tragedy as far as I'm concerned. Okay.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Christine. This will be followed by Junior George. Christine, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Your Excellency. I don't have to ask you how you're doing because you're looking good to me. Now, that diaspora list, is it a master list? I'm calling from Toronto. Well, I'm on from Toronto. So when that list gets to Toronto, would it be through the consulate or through a community organization? And the other question is, well, two-part question. The other question is, a person who is fully vaccinated and coming to Grenada, will that person have to take a test 72 hours before? And do that person have to be quarantined? And if so, can they quarantine at their place of residence in Grenada?
First part of your question, the answer is, it clearly, as I mentioned before, the Toronto mission is the base of contact, should be the base of contact with the Toronto community, with the Canadian community, and so on. So clearly, ideally, it ought to be so, and we are insisting that's the best approach and the safest approach to make sure that it is clearly understood by all concerned. So that is what it should be. So that's why Mr. Derek James, for example, who is working home now with the diaspora community, has to work within the context of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is really the ministry he's responsible to reporting to. And therefore, any contact that he had with as Consul General in Toronto, Honorary Consul General, would have to be operating through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the same office that he was in charge of in Toronto. And there's another person there now. So they'll be working closely, and they should be working very closely together with the community in a united front to be able to make sure that we get the maximum amount of support from the community in Canada.
Okay. Now, how about the part about the
oh yes,
if you're fully vaccinated?
Yes.
If you're fully vaccinated, yeah.
Yes. Right now, you're right about the 72 hours test before you come in, and that you have to be fully vaccinated. But there's insistence still that you have to quarantine for 2 days. And during that time, a test is taken, and when the test turns out to be negative still, after the 3 days, the 72 hours that you did the first test, then you are free to go to a place of destination. And there are quarantine places in Grenada, hotels and some homes that are assigned as quarantine facility that you can apply to. It's online. The information is online, and the cost of each of those quarantine places is also online. So the information can be made available to you. But I must admit, there's some debates about the whole question of quarantine. There's a school of thought in many countries, right, that persons who are vaccinated and test negative for 72 hours before they come to a country should not be asked again to do another test, and in some cases not be asked to further quarantine. And some cases, people are insisting, my sister, that if 2 days we have is not sufficient. I respectfully disagree. If anything, I believe we should be liberalizing more and encouraging people to vaccinate. If I vaccinate, I'm fully vaccinated, and 99% of the people who are vaccinated have shown to be protected. Why then are you forcing me to take all these quarantine days? That's the philosophy a lot of that is being articulated around. But there's still people of school of thought that say we need to be careful. So we're doing it gradually, my friend. And this is the approach, and it's better we do so, and better that we do so and then have to be sorry in some time down the road. Dr. Hon, do you want to add anything? You don't need to add anything more? Okay.
Okay, so we go on to our next participant, Junior George. Thank you so much for using the Ride Along platform to broadcast this engagement this afternoon. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you so much, Philo, and everyone on the panel, everyone that's watching. I know we only have one question, so permit me to just make a quick statement before, and then I'll ask my question. I promise you I'll be brief. As it relates to the question that was placed to the Prime Minister earlier, as it relates to Israel, it is factual that Israel did have a huge spike in COVID-19 numbers. At its maximum in recent, as of September 15, they had a total of over 7,000 cases per day. So there were an increase in the numbers in Israel. It started to drop from 2 days ago, it's dropped down to 1,800 per day, but there was a drastic increase in numbers in COVID-19 cases in Israel. And Israel, as we know, are very high in COVID-19 vaccination. One of the reasons that they're saying is because that the vaccine probably dwindled down after a period of time, and that could have been possibly the cause of why the numbers spike again. So the facts is on the side of the person who asked the question. They did have a huge spike, and knowing that they were in fact a highly vaccinated country. But my question to you, Mr. Prime Minister, my first question, hopefully I get another opportunity to ask a second question, is that as it relates to the 2-day quarantine, a lot of people have been saying that the 2-day quarantine aided in what's happened and what transpired up until this point. Do you think that the 2-day quarantine protocol need to be addressed or adjusted? And do you think, well, in the very near future, do you think that that is something that the government is looking at?
Adjust it upwards or downwards, because I think you actually want us to for you to clarify. Because just the word adjustment does not tell me where you're coming from. You mean adjust it? If you say adjust it downward, you mean that you're going to zero.
Right. No, a lot of people have been calling for the 7-day quarantine to come back into effect, but because they are saying that the 2-day quarantine contributed to the situation that we're in currently.
Okay. The first thing I want to mention is that there's a different point you raise that the gentleman Williams raised. You're saying there was a spike. He said there were a devastating spike of increases. Remember, 70%, 80% vaccination means 30% is still unvaccinated. What I know is a number of people in Israel had not vaccinated, and therefore were able to carry the virus. And in some cases, as you know, even if you're vaccinated, you could still pick up the virus. So that argument, that's why I had to clarify it. That I know. So that was not supporting the facts. Your statement, Junior, is quite different from the statement of Williams. So I want to be very careful. In any event, as a person that follow numbers, 7,000 of the millions of people, that you consider devastating? I don't consider that a devastating number. So I think you want to be careful, because words mean a lot. And that's why I really have to explain that, Junior. And I feel opposition, what we say, they were absolutely correct. Because I don't want anyone to leave here with a perception that vaccinated people can get massive infections and in fact have serious hospitalization. That is not the case at all. Junior, I want to be very clear here. We had two-day quarantine for almost 9 months in Grenada. There were no community spread. And we had a few people came in with tests that were negative. A very small proportion. In some cases, they found out they were positive when they were ready to go back. And we were able to check all the community spread, and we had no community spread. None whatsoever. You know when the community spread came, Junior, and I said I don't want to go back because I don't like any perception that I'm blaming anybody, right? But if people want to blame government for too, I'll have to explain. I don't have a choice based on the question that you asked. You remember Memorial Weekend, Carnival Weekend. 2 weeks later, and that's it, that's the science. We had massive community spread. So I don't know how anyone logically can put any major community spread to whether it's 6-day quarantine, 13-day quarantine, or 2-day quarantine. The 2 days were in place for 9 months or more, and we did not have any community spread. Grenada was being boasted around the world and the Caribbean. My brothers and sisters, leaders from the region was saying, boy, you really have done a fantastic job. We were number one. You know that, Junior. Right? After Carnival, we were no longer number one. In fact, we went up almost last. Well, I think we get into a measure of control again, and I'm thankful to the Almighty God and to Grenadians who are of all groups, because I have praised members of the National Democratic Congress who have come forward and helping even in vaccination. I've gained at least one individual and more, and others are coming forward. And that's what we have to do at this point in time. We need everybody, every single body, because NNP supporters are dying, NDC supporters are dying, all kind of peace supporters are dying, so and going to hospital. So we need everyone in this fight. Religious persons, whether it's Adventist, Catholic, Methodist, all sorts of persons are facing the consequences of this dreaded virus.
So just to add a little on the topic of quarantine, one of the things about quarantine is, of course, we have to take into consideration the behaviors of our population. So in order to curb the spread of any disease, well, in particular the COVID-19 virus, it is important to have proper behaviors. And in this case, what's needed to help prevent spread would be 1, proper wearing of your face mask, 2, sanitizing of your hands, 3, avoiding crowds, because of course in crowds you can have what we call super spreader events. So even though, let's say quarantine is reduced or extended, if persons do not change their behaviors, we can still have, community spread, and we can still have clusters and outbreaks. So it's really more important for persons to change their behaviors on a day-to-day basis, because, I noticed, for example, we no longer have lockdown weekends. Yesterday, I drove to town and I noticed that there were a number of persons without masks, some persons with the mask under their nose. And I was really worried because, I thought that the numbers were going down. But if we continue to gather without doing, the proper things, wearing your mask, sanitizing your hands, avoiding these super spreader events, then our numbers can rise again. So I think more important to whether we increase the days or decrease the days would be the behaviors of our people, to make sure that we try to avoid as much as is possible these large crowds, which can be super spreader events and cause outbreaks such as the one that we had recently. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Donald. Just to go back to the Israel issue before we take another participant, and this was shared by Margaret Francis in the Zoom chat. She's explaining that the breakthroughs in Israel were largely among older people who had underlying conditions. So we have to clarify that type of information when we make the assertions that we do. So up next, we are going to go to Natasha. Natasha, good afternoon. Tell us where you're joining the meeting from, and please go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi, good day. I'm from Trinidad. I know they removed the restrictions that churches can now have 20 people or less. So what was my question is that are they opening for the marriage licenses and weddings? That's my question. If you could get marriage licenses now.
Yeah, we are giving marriage licenses. The question of how much persons that can be at a particular function is of course limited. So one can get married, may not have you can't have the fetes that we normally be associated with weddings or in case of funerals. I've been to a few funerals in the graveside recently of persons that were close to me and so on, and people are in very small numbers, which is very unfortunate and some cases. And but they keep the protocols as established. The Minister of Religious Affairs, Minister of Education, Emlyn Pierre, has been holding very in-depth discussion with the religious community, and there could be some changes in the not-too-distant future as far as the protocol is concerned about church activities. The churches themselves didn't feel at this point was the right time to liberalize their church activities, but they examine it, and if the numbers continue to trend downwards as it is right now, we might see some changes there. But we are getting, I must say, generally speaking, very strong support from the religious community to obey the rules and to make sure then the members are protected and the country is protected. Generally speaking, the religious community has been one of the best in terms of organizations, in terms of the general support.
Okay, just a matter of housekeeping. When you're given the floor, please ensure that you turn your camera on so that we can see you while we hear you. Okay, so we go on now to Charles. Charles, good afternoon to you. Let us know your full name and where you're joining the meeting from. Charles, are you still with us? Okay, if not, we go on to Gus. Gus, good afternoon to you, Gus. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Dr. Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister, good afternoon to you, and we want to thank you for taking the time and the initiative to join with us this evening for this very important topic. On behalf of my Crossroads family listenership, I have one question in two parts. The first, in recent months or so, Grenada's small population has been ravaged by COVID more than any other nation in terms of percentage. At the same time, the anti-COVID protests have become utterly vulgar, with groups masquerading in the streets with profanity-laced anti-vax tirades. Are we experiencing a cultural and moral miseducation that is possibly tied to education, to policy?
Well, the truth is, Gus, it's clear. Social media has been a dominating factor, communication media in the 21st century. I mean, those of us who remember what life used to be for us when we were growing up, we didn't have that available at all. So people are on the social media all the time, the young people in particular, and many other parts of the population. And therefore, they receive all these anti-vax. And you know what is unfortunate? Sometimes you hear a guy posing with all his medical qualification and he gives all his degrees and so on, and then he says that he's an expert in information. All the experts, the millions of experts that have spoken, but he's the one expert that knows it all. And sometimes people listen to that. Hey, this man is a medical doctor, and look what he says. So I think that's a problem, clearly, for us. But I must say, though, because, yes, we had the major community spread, and there's a lot of hard work are taking place, I should say, in doing everything to bring that back as quickly as possible. And we to some extent, we are succeeding. I think Dr. Donald pointed that out. We are not where we will be yet. The cases have dropped down dramatically. But anything could happen again. If we relax ourselves, we could find ourselves going back up. So I think, yes, education and the ability of one to withstand and to decipher news as you get them is a critical factor going forward. So that's something I think we have to keep our message out as much as possible. And that's why I mentioned, Gus, in the Grenada context, in the small societies, because I talk to my other colleagues in the OECS, as chairman of the OECS, and they all say the same thing. Even some of their own political supporters who always listen to them on almost everything they tell them. They may not even say anything to you, yes or no, but they're just not doing it. So it is a problem because they listen to all these things and the fear that the vaccine can kill them, the vaccine can hurt them. And you're telling them, listen to the probabilities, listen to the percentage. You know, as I always tell people here, Gus, my mom, who is literally next week going to be 99, she took both AstraZeneca, the first and second doses. And she didn't have the slightest complaint. I had a little pain on one of my arm for a day or so. She had nothing whatsoever. So if she at 99, don't tell me a 99 person will not have some underlying problems. And people all around a different age group are taking the vaccine. And therefore, the chances that you getting sick by taking the vaccine is so low, but the chances of you getting very sick if you are not vaccinated and get the virus, which is happening and was responsible for the spread, the tremendous problems we've had, is a serious issue. And that's why we say hand-to-hand combat. So Gus, people like yourself with your media houses, your house in New York, can help. You can encourage Grenadians, call their family. They themselves in New York are vaccinated. Call your family home and tell them that they have to do this. There was a case, Gus, of a family. I got the story of a family. They booked to come home to spend time with their family, about 4 of them. And they called their family members to tell them they're coming. But they asked them, are you all in the house vaccinated? Nobody in the house was vaccinated. They tell them, well, look, until you're vaccinated, we are not coming. You know, every member went and got vaccinated. In other words, we have to use all available information and support in getting people to vaccinate and to do what they have to do to protect themselves.
Thank you for your question, Gus. We go now to Hannah. Hannah, good afternoon.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hannah, and I'm currently in the States. I posted a question in the chat, and I don't think it was read, so I'm just going to read it out aloud. Will Grenada be taking precedence from Antigua in terms of their intended move to drop in all the COVID restrictions by the end of the year? Because the Prime Minister had stated that by now everybody would have had the opportunity to get vaccinated, and they're just making a conscious decision to remain unvaccinated. So he doesn't believe in crippling the economy much longer to, satisfy those kinds of people. So will Grenada be taking precedence from them?
We're all sovereign states, and each leader listen to what is happening in the world, of course, the understanding of science, and they make decisions on what they believe is acceptable to their own society. I cannot tell you, I don't see it possible that we will liberalize to the extent that you are talking about in Grenada between now and the end of the year. I don't see it. We'll have to almost have zero cases, and also a much higher level. We'd almost have to double the percentage of vaccinated persons that we have today. So I don't think so, because let's accept this. If I was to take that position in Grenada, for example, and because I am fed up with the people that are not vaccinating, and I am in fact angry with some of them, then I liberalize, and we have mass infection and people start dying as flies, and the hospital services become overwhelmed, and I'm not able, I have to close down the country and have no money to pay salaries and to do anything that I want to do. The same economy that we're talking about, that we can't afford to nosedive by any action that we didn't take, will be far worse. So I think the Prime Minister of Antigua has looked at his own situation and has determined that is the best, his decision is the best interest of the people of Antigua. I have to take decision that I see as in the best interest of the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. So this is where we are at this particular time.
Okay, thank you for your question there, Hannah. Let's go now to Lana. Lana, good afternoon. Is Lana still with us?
Hello.
Yes, Lana, we can hear you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for organising this. We've had a lot of talk now about getting vaccinated. What I would like to turn to is those who are infected. I've seen and heard some stories about the treatment of those patients at the moment in Grenada, and I'm really quite concerned. And I wonder, what resources or what training is being given to medical professions treating these people? Do we have enough ventilators, etc.? Please, could you talk about that, both the Prime Minister and the Honourable Minister? Thank you.
I love the doctor who is on spot at the hospital, observing every aspect of what is taking place today. The medical facilities, as medical director, Dr. Donald, she will answer.
So good afternoon again, and thank you for that question. So in terms of caring for the patients, so yes, we have trained persons caring for the patients. We have our medical team, which has a head and has other persons working along with him. There's a critical care team. So basically, our medical team for the COVID-19 cases, we have both the critical care team and the regular patients team. We have also nurses assigned to that section as well for our isolation unit. So we have a whole team of professionals who deal with these cases. They are trained in caring for patients with COVID-19. Most of the persons working with patients at the moment have been working with the COVID-19 patients since our initial case from March last year. We are guided by the Pan American Health Organization protocols. So these are the guidelines we use for treatment of our patients. So yes, we have trained persons seeing our COVID-19 patients. We have, as I said, internists, critical care persons. They are the ones caring for the patients along with our nursing team. I must say we do have issues with our manpower, but the persons who are on the ground are doing a good job taking care of the patients. Yeah? In terms of the ventilators, yes, we do have enough ventilators on site. We've never been in a situation where we did not have enough ventilators to care for the patients. On island, we have like 9 BiPAPs, 9 portable ventilators, 9 conventional ventilators, and we have ventilators in storage. So we've never had to use, well, at least not even half of that amount. I guess based on our population, we haven't had that many patients who required ventilatory support at a given time. So far in terms of the resources like ventilators, CPAP, BiPAP, we have been okay. We've never been short of any of these. We've had the most important thing in most of the COVID-19 cases is that of oxygenation. And we've been able to provide oxygen support for many of these patients who required it. We've never been out of oxygen either. So we've been okay in terms of the oxygen supply. We use, again, the PAHO guidelines. So we use dexamethasone, which we have on island. We cover persons for community acquired pneumonia in the cases that require it. We have the necessary drugs to take care of that issue. And we do, up to this time, as I said, we haven't had any shortages in terms of the necessary drugs or even oxygen supply to care for our patients.
Yeah, Lorna, just to add, only recently, there were concern at one time, and there were rumors, and there's always rumors around, that we have a shortage of oxygen in the hospital, and that became something alarmed up some persons in the country. It turned out when I found out, I called to find out about that. That was not true at all, but we have had several sources of support. We do get supplies from Trinidad, and a local facility here that work with the companies in Trinidad. The St. George's University Chancellor and his team have been extremely helpful in sourcing oxygen supply to us. And only yesterday evening, as chairman of the OECS, I got a call from the Director General to say that one government is now making a specific oxygen supply tank available with a major supply of oxygen, in addition to all that we have. That, and Dr. Donald already said we don't have a shortage, but we're not taking chances. So we are getting help from our friends in the region and internationally in that respect. But I do want to point out to Lorna that long before COVID-19, you would hear stories of people saying that a nurse or doctor did not treat them properly and did not show the interest in service. That's something you hear long before I come into government. While I'm in government, I've heard it. And I cannot say that they're telling lies, because I mean, some people have fallen short in terms of service, that whether it's in the hospital, whether it's in a government department, you hear it all over the country. And even in the private sector, certain persons on the job may not perform the task in the humble way they're supposed to, and that's a possibility, and we don't excuse it when that is brought to attention. Those in authority, like Dr. Donald and the team, the PS, the minister, will deal with it with accordingly. So we are not here to defend anybody who has not performed, but I do want to say, given the situation that the hospital services found itself in the last few weeks, I would not be shocked that someone may not act in the most humane way under the pressure that some people were operating under. And that's not an excuse, but it's to say that some people are working for 12, 13, 14 hours, and that's the human limitation. So I'm just saying we all have to understand the different circumstances. Yes, if there are issues, we need to deal with it, and we won't defend what is not right, because when someone is sick and they meet a health professional, that person could, by the behavior, could either make them feel well by the way they treat them, or make them feel even worse medically. So we understand that problem, but we are working well. The staff is generally working well, and we give them the support they have to. But at the same time, we are not afraid to pull up a staff member if they're doing something that is not in the best interest of the consumers.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Our next participant is Rick Francois. Rick, good afternoon to you. For the host, I think he shows up as Galaxy Note 10.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
So my comment is, I was one of the first people in the Grenada Diaspora in the UK to actually contract COVID-19. In fact, it's here to stay. At one stage, I was seriously ill, hospitalized. And during that period, I actually lost my father, who Dr. Michelle know quite well, Kingston Murray. What I have to say is I must commend the Grenada government for the job they've done to date in suppressing the spread of COVID-19 in the island. What I actually did in the immediate aftermath of my illness was to share a video on social media that was seen by many people in the diaspora to highlight the seriousness of COVID-19 and the effects it has on your body. Of late, in the last month, I've been seeing several people that I know back in Grenada, from growing up in my community in St. Patrick's, from colleagues from my time in the police force, etc., who are no longer with us. And even though in the last couple of days I've seen a decline in the numbers in Grenada, I want to continue to say to the general population and people in the diaspora currently looking at this and listening in, unless you are seriously affected by COVID-19 personally, and you have relations and friends that you have lost as a result of COVID-19, you would never really understand the personal pain and trauma it causes. I had my dad with me for 2 weeks before his death. He was fine, walking around as normal. We did several stuff together. And in a blink, we were both hospitalized at the same time. And then I lost him. And I want everybody to listen carefully because this is serious. Please take heed. You know what I'm saying? Please listen to what the health advisors are saying in relation to COVID-19. Because I'm all too aware that on the island, we don't have a lot of resources to fight this. Not just COVID-19 directly, but the side effects. You know, serious problems around organ failures, etc. I was fortunate. I'm lucky to still be here because I got good care at the hospital I went to in the UK. They looked after me, and I had good people around me helping me with this. You know what I'm saying? And in the aftermath of it, there is still a lot to endure, a lot to deal with, you know. So that's really what I wanted to say, you know. I also want to say thanks to the High Commissioner. A few weeks back, she arranged a church service for families of members of the diaspora in the UK who would have lost loved ones as a result of the pandemic. And she invited me along to that. And I want to say thanks very much. But please continue doing the work you're doing, Prime Minister Michel, in terms of getting the message across to the general population and everyone in the diaspora that continue to help in whatever way you can. Thank you very much. Like I said, just continue to keep each other safe. That's my contribution, really.
Well, I want to thank our brother Murray for that important testimonial, because I knew his father well. His father was on the same cricket team as when I captained the Grenada cricket team. He was one of the best fast bowler Grenada has ever seen, Kingston Murray. And they did call me to inform me of his passing at COVID. So he's given you his own very practical experience of losing his father, who was relatively healthy. And that was the early days before vaccines were available. I'm sure if vaccines were available, Kingston would have taken advantage of it and probably would have had around us today. But I was able to be with them at that funeral virtually. I spoke at that funeral about my good friend on his passing. But I think the statement of Brother Murray, I think, is extremely important, because it's only those who have passed through it can tell you the pain. I remember listening to Como, the presenter on CNN, and he said he doesn't wish that on anybody. He spent 2 weeks literally in a basement away from his family in the most pain that he has ever experienced, and he's just telling everybody, don't get this thing. So I think the testimonial from our brother, I think is very important, and I hope and pray other people are listening and taking advice from him.
And I just want to add that having COVID-19 is it's a terrible experience. To the persons close to me who I've spoken to as well, the experience is one that no one wants to have. And I really would like to implore on all of us, let us take heed, as he said. Let us follow the guidelines. Let us follow the protocols. Let us try to wear our masks properly. Let us sanitize our hands as much as is necessary. Let us try and avoid gatherings and super spreader events, because, these super spreader events, it might be a moment of enjoyment and then some weeks of pain. So, we really appreciate this testimony, and it's good for other persons to hear that this disease it's serious. There's nothing nice about it. And for persons who would have gone through it, they can tell you. You feel like persons would tell me they felt like they were going to die. And, you don't want to experience something like that. So let us heed the call. Let us try our best. I appreciate the fact that a lot of persons in the diaspora has reached out and has assisted in educating our population, in education on vaccination, the reason why we should be vaccinated, how we can prevent spreads. And we appreciate that very much. And we want, the persons in the diaspora to continue with those sort of educational sessions to help our population to understand the need and heed that call to be vaccinated so that we could help prevent another, outbreak and to prevent hospitalizations and prevent deaths, because really and truly, this is a very difficult time for all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Donald, and thank you again, Rick Francois, for sharing that testimony with us this afternoon. Wendy Hastick, we come now to you. Good afternoon to you. Wendy, you should see a note from the host pop up on your screen, so just accept and that will unmute your microphone. Okay, Wendy, we're not getting you unmuted, so let's go to the next person and then we'll come back to you in just a minute. Nolene Thompson, good afternoon to you.
Hello, good afternoon. My question, well, actually, I'm in Toronto. My question is, in regards to people being fully vaccinated and quarantining for 2 days, we know that not everyone is honorable. So, and there is evidence that some individuals may use fraudulent documents. So what is being done to ensure that vaccination cards or passports from other countries are authentic?
Yes, Nolan, that's a very good question. I think we have had a couple examples. First of all, the penalty for this is very stiff. You could be jailed for that misrepresentation, because you can cause the death of people by that misrepresentation. What we've done is to increase the science of identification of fraudulent document. And there's a service provider that now been contracted by the COVID team and the Ministry of Health that will be able to prove and examine those documents properly and be able to know whether they're authentic or not. It's just like a passport now you can verify whether a passport is authentic or not. Because if we are going to rely, as you know, the world is going to rely a lot on the vaccination cards for entry. Some countries, as you know, already have now indicated that the only people who are totally vaccinated will be allowed into their country, and so on. Many countries and some of the more powerful countries in the world are now doing this. It means, therefore, one has to have a secured system of verification. So if we are following that example and we clearly leading in that, in fact, we are indicating, unless you're vaccinated, you are not coming. So in essence that we have already started that process. So it means that we have to increase that verification process, and that is being done.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I think we have sorted the issue with Wendy. So Wendy, we'll come back to you now. Good afternoon.
I don't see the, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. My name is Wendy Hestick and I'm in Maryland, USA. I want to say thank you for this opportunity. However, my interest, and this is without trying to be insensitive, I want to give condolences to those who have had loss. I thank the Prime Minister for all the work and the health officials for all the work they've done in Grenada. My concern as a mom, and as I hear things out of Grenada, especially from St. David's, which is where my roots are, what are we doing in terms of living with COVID, since we are told it's something that will not go away shortly? My forte is housing and construction and development. And so I have a lot of tools and I'd love to share my construction skills. I first of all started to stay with women because I have daughters, but then I feel that there are a lot of people that need to be trained in the skills. And within the construction trades, my forte is carpentry. So I would love to link up with maybe TAMCC or someone or some group within the diaspora and in Grenada in order to provide preparatory skills for people, young people, to go forward during and after COVID for employment. And I'd like to know where the government is in that thrust.
Wendy, I'm so happy to hear someone from Maryland on this particular program. As you know, I lived in Maryland for a lot of years, so it's good to hear. But it's also pleasant to hear a woman speak about or expertise in construction, because generally speaking, while we were growing up, women were not involved too much in the construction industry. And I think a number of young girls now are seeing the benefit, because that's one of the more lucrative area of employment opportunity at a certain level in the society. So I certainly I believe it will be exciting when if you have that skill and you have the equipment and support that can widen the opportunities for young boys and girls in the society for construction, in the construction industry, because the jobs that are being created in the country now, a lot of it, I would say over 60-70% of it right now in this COVID period are construction related jobs. So I would suggest, Wendy, that the embassy in Washington, which is the U.S. Embassy in Washington, the Grenada Embassy in the U.S. in Washington, would be the ideal place if you could contact the Ambassador Smith, and provide her the information and indicate what ways you can help in terms of the working with the education system. And you don't have to be home in Grenada physically. As you know, a lot of work can be done virtually. I think it would be a welcome initiative on your part, and I really value this contribution, particularly this initiative of yours here this evening.
Thank you. Before we take the next participant, I'll just alert everyone that we will seek to end at 5, so that means we have another 20 minutes or so. Up next, we have Maria Celestine. Maria, please go ahead. Go right ahead, Maria.
Oh, hi. Yeah. I just wanted to commend the Diaspora as well as the Grenada government for all the work that they have been doing. Recently, I've been listening to a program, I believe it's from either St. Lucia or the Vincentian government. And they spoke about how Grenada was doing well, and then we were not doing well. And they said they were blaming it because we were too liberal by allowing the policemen to not police the folks who they're saying were responsible for what happened over the carnival weekend. But I've also been hearing recently that Grenada has been used as an example as to how we are handling our recent situation. They talked about our packages that we were giving out and all efforts that we were doing, and we are seeing traction on it now. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to commend everyone, the government, the diaspora, the citizens, everybody who are doing whatever it is it takes to get this thing back under control. Grenada has always been, in years before and currently, one of the leaders in the Caribbean as examples as to what we can do together as a community, people who come together. And I really applaud you guys for everything. I feel so very proud to be a Grenadian at this time.
Yeah. My dear sister, just to make the point, I will not want to comment on what the reason for a particular problem in a country. I am not there. I'm not the prime minister of that country. I am not there physically to understand the circumstances. So to speak to issues about another country, not knowing all the facts, it's to me is would a bit unenlightening, and to me would not be wise. I won't do it, and if others are doing it, then that's their problem. I do not do this because that is that statement about the police is responsible for not being controlling what happened in Grenada is a very unfortunate one, because it's totally not true. It is not true. What are the police going to do if you have 5,000 jab in a particular area? Joe, gun them down, tear gas them. What is that? What one is advocating? And if you have the virus there and you tear gas people, are you going to get less virus? Come on, it's unfortunate. That's why I'm happy, my sister, you made the point. We did very well before. We were one of the first country in the Caribbean that recognized COVID-19 as an issue. And I always repeat this, and people remember that when early February last year, when the problem in the Guyana elections, with the uncertainty of accepting the results, were there and the problems, we as 5 leaders of the region were asked to go to Guyana to try to bring some harmony among the parties. And when I got there, I saw some of my colleagues, and these are facts, I'm not stating something that nobody can say is not true. And they were still hugging one another, and I said, guys, are you aware what's happening outside there? I'm not hugging anybody, I was bouncing everybody's hand with my elbow. And the camera picked it up and showed it across the region. That's a fact. And by the time we were leaving, my colleagues said, Keith, say not to hug, and so on. By the time everybody reached back home, the problems of COVID-19 were hitting the road in every single country in the Caribbean. And for years, Grenada was doing extremely well. But some of us took it for granted despite our pleading. We had spike. But we have fought it again together. And that's, I like the point the sister made. When we have a problem, while we seek help from our friends, first of all, it is said that if you expect people to help you, you must help yourself. And I'm proud of the fact that while we got help from friends, while we sought help from our friends regionally and internationally, while we did, my friends, the people of the country, join hands, the workers, the health workers at all levels in our country came forward. And that's why I am proud of the fact the sister made the point. We are reducing the numbers again and controlling things. We are not where we should be and we want to be right now. We are doing a little bit of easement, step by step. But we are cautioning our people not to get complacent. Do not go back to do the things that cause us to be where we were before. So I'm proud of Grenada. I'm proud of the people of this country. And therefore, I'm very happy. My sister, I'm extremely happy that you have seen through some of those comments you've heard.
Okay, let's go now to Ellen Balwant, Berlin. Good afternoon.
Good evening, and thank you. Good evening, Prime Minister. I'd like to ask, and before I go any further, I'd like to say that I'm calling from the UK. I'm a very proud Grenadian, as well as all my family. We've all been double vaccinated, and we hope to visit Grenada next month. I would like to ask, why is it necessary to apply for authorization to enter Grenada once you've complied with all the other instructions online? Why is it necessary to ask for a further vaccination? And also, I do take your point about calling family and friends wherever you are in the country, calling family and friends in Grenada and asking them to get vaccinated. My mum's 87 and she's been double vaccinated and she's very well. And I would encourage anybody and everybody in Grenada to do that. It's, it's the best thing for prevention.
Yes.
And, Grenada can only benefit from it. We need to protect our island, and it's been doing so well. And to get on top of this spike again, we do need to help ourselves, as you've said before. So I'd just like to have an answer for that, please.
Yeah, my sister, before I answer, I wanted to be very clear basically what you're saying. I'm assuming that you're saying that you are vaccinated and there are certain conditions have been asked, and we are asking you again to still vaccinate. Is that what you're saying? Or you're saying...
I'm fully vaccinated. However...
I didn't hear that.
You
are vaccinated. You said you are.
Yes.
And you say we're still asking you to be vaccinated again?
No, you're asking for authorization to enter Grenada.
No, if you're coming, the condition is that you must vaccinate. And if you provide proof and you're a Grenadian, then I don't know that you need anything else. The airline could determine whether you have a passage or not. There are no conditions again, my dear. If anyone tells you there are any condition, I'm not aware of it as Prime Minister. I'm the Minister responsible for immigration. If you are vaccinated fully, you are bona fide Grenadian, then I don't know anyone could ask you for any authorization further. So whoever is asking you that, I can't imagine who could be doing that within the system.
That's a terminology, PM, that's used on the portal, but it's just for the record keeping to note that persons are vaccinated when they are coming, so that we have everything documented. So authorization is simply the term that's being used.
Did you hear that, my sister? In other words, they're not saying there's any condition for you coming. That can't be right. So I think the press secretary is informing that's just a portal word from the portal system that we have. But clearly, if you're vaccinated, you're a Grenadian, there can be no other serious condition for coming home. We welcome you, and we look forward to see you in a month's time visiting your family and friends, and we look forward to bringing more Grenadians back home, and Christmas coming.
Okay, we go now to Karen Park Bernard. Karen?
Thank you, Philo, and good evening to my dear Prime Minister. It's good to see you. And Dr. Donald and your team, you're doing an awesome job. As Philo said, I'm Karen Park Bernard, and I'm the coordinator here in Montreal, working along with a number of organizations, and I work with Lisa and the others throughout the diaspora, procuring equipment for Grenada. Mr. Prime Minister, I think my question is going to be a bit controversial. In your opening statement, you indicated that many of us out here in the diaspora have had our vaccination, some by choice, and some we did not have the choice. I know in Grenada, vaccination is not mandatory, and it appears that the message is not getting to some people, or some people, they're not heeding the word by some of the health professionals. Is the government planning at any time to have this vaccination mandatory to certain aspect of the of your sector, probably the public sector? I don't know.
My friend, very extremely good question. That one is tormenting for me. Let me say this. I'm my fundamental philosophy, I don't believe in just passing laws to force people to do things just like that. I don't believe that it's always necessary to do so, unless as a last resort. In other words, I believe moral suasion is the best approach. Because I know from examples after 37 years in politics, there have a lot of laws in the books that people hardly even look at, and the system seem unable to even implement and to see that it's adhered to. So I believe that moral suasion is the best approach at this particular time. Because this is life and death, and I don't see why I have to go to Parliament to pass a law to force you to protect your own life. and in any event, I look at the issue of mask mandate, wearing a mask, and social distancing and so on. That's in the law. But you pass a lot of parts of the country. The police ticket people, they pay. Some people still not doing it. So we need a lot of collective support, one-on-one. The what I call the ground support to people, to get people to understand it is in their interest. We could go to Parliament and we may reach that stage if we realize that people simply are refusing to do what is necessary to protect themselves. We have no choice. But that will not be, I will be doing it with a heavy heart. And honestly, I know some people are not happy with me when I say this, some of my own supporters who feel strongly about this. And I understand their position. But one could only do what he thinks is going to be enforceable and is going to achieve the desired goal, which is to get people to vaccinate and to support what we believe is right for themselves. So my dear sister, as you pointed out, I know you're right. Some people have voluntarily accepted that is in their interest. Some people are forced into doing that in the Grenada, in Canada and other countries. I am not sure that may necessarily work in the Grenada situation. I have to be convinced otherwise.
Prime Minister, before we take one more participant, there is a question in the Zoom chat that speaks to education, and of course that's a sector that a lot of people are concerned about. So the question is basically, how soon will schools be reopened?
The Minister of Education is now engaging the teachers' union on the serious methodology for reopening school. I'm really very concerned about the fact that our children are not actually in school physically, because while we have the technology and while we're doing a lot, and some children are getting left out. And you know what the unfortunate thing is? The poorer children, the children who are less equipped financially and otherwise, are the ones most likely to be left out. And I know where I came from, and from a level of poverty, and I know without education, in fact, most of the cabinet members would not have a proper lifestyle today if it was not for education. And therefore, I feel almost a sense of guilt, knowing that under my watch, a number of children, for one reason or the other, because of pandemic and other reasons, some children are getting left out. So we have to do everything possible and to ensure that we can put systems in place. But we need the cooperation. If we go and open schools now, with most of the teachers not vaccinated, we could open a Pandora box of infection for children and cause and have the reverse, which is a serious damage to the education system in the country. So we need the teachers' cooperation. We need the parents' cooperation, and the minister is engaging both sides. The unions must understand their responsibility first and foremost must be to the students. And we all have, the government must realize this, that our first responsibility is to all concerned. But the children are the ones will be most affected by the fact that they are not in school physically. And not only is the really, in terms of knowledge, the biggest problem as I see it with the lack of physical education going on is the social problems that can emanate from a child being not able to interact with his peers. I know how important that was for me and for young people. You look forward when school is reopening to meet your friends, to chat, and to establish relationships. Some of them have been permanent. Some of my best friends are friends today, after years in politics, have been the ones that I met when I was going to high school and university because of the classroom connection and contact. So we are going to be doing everything possible. And therefore, we urging the society, we urging the trade union, the teachers union, to sit down with the minister and come up with a plan of action to have teachers vaccinated and to make sure that our children will be safe going to school as soon as possible.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We do have just about 3 minutes left before we have to end this evening's proceedings. I will at this time ask Dr. Donald to talk a bit about the urgent needs that we have at this time. It's a question that has routinely come up in the chat this afternoon, just to highlight for the persons.
Okay. So again, I would just like to say a really big thank you to the diaspora for all of the assistance, given to us, particularly toward the medical response. You have given us supplies, you have given us equipment, technical support, physicians on the ground. We really appreciate it. I mean, from the medical team, we have received so much love from you that, it was overwhelming. And we want to say that, we appreciate it very much and thank you so much. In terms of our needs, now, one of the things I spoke of earlier was that whole proposal to create a facility for isolation. So one of the needs in terms of to help with that is, we would need beds, we would need infusion pumps, vital signs monitors, patient monitors, tents. One of the things, we always forget the psychological support. So simple things like stuffed toys and, the little softballs. These are things that can help patients, particularly the pediatric ones. I'm a pediatrician, so I can't forget my little group. So these are things that can help them while they're in hospital, and not just for the kids, because for adults too, you need the psychosocial and psychological support. And sometimes these little things help. We also want things like anti-cubitus mattresses, because these things could help with persons who would be in hospital for longer periods. It would help to prevent ulcers and scars and so on from being in the bed for extended periods. In terms of medication, now, one of the things, we've been really trying hard to get was the monoclonal antibodies. It's been very, very difficult. So presently on island, we have none. So if there's anyone out there in the diaspora who knows someone who can source or get us some monoclonal antibodies, we'd be very, very grateful. So this is one of the areas I would really like for someone in the diaspora who has that type of link to assist us with. So these are some of our immediate needs. Again, from our master list, a few things were crossed off because we're expecting a few items to come in the coming days. But for now, we want to focus a little bit too on our setting up of that center. So we want beds. Beds is important because we use up all of our beds to facilitate and increase our bed capacity to house our COVID-19 patients. So once again, the monoclonal antibodies, top of the list in terms of medication. We don't want you to forget that one. That's very important. And as I said, beds, vital signs monitors, patient monitors, tents, those balls, stuffed toys, anti-cubitus mattresses. These are some of the things that we need urgently at this moment. So thank you very much again, and we really appreciate all the love you've shared with us, all of the support you've given to us. We're very, very happy. And we were saying that, we've never received so much love from the diaspora in a long time. I mean, it was just overwhelming. And even we have a group of physicians out there, the Grenada COVID-19 crisis group. They've been very, very supportive, and they've been assisting us also in accumulating some of the equipment and supplies to face this response. So thank you again. All right. And we just want to say how much we appreciate all the support we've gotten from you up till now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Donald. Prime Minister, your closing thoughts and comments. I know you've said a lot, but you must have some parting words for our friends in the diaspora.
Just to add, Dr. Donald, I believe a number of people asking about vitamins. We could always do with some of that, because to strengthen the immune system, zinc and all these basic stuff that we take for granted, people are saying that we need to fortify people a lot more and to take care of their health a lot more than we may have been doing. I think one thing COVID-19 has taught us is that the more healthy we are, the better equipped we are able to deal with the viruses, because viruses are around us every day. The reason that most of us don't get sick very often is because we are strong enough, our immune system. So we need to strengthen it as much as possible. And the use of cinnamon is good. They talk about that. The use of See, I use cinnamon a lot, so I can talk to this, and turmeric and ginger. I have them every morning, and it makes me feel real good. And I believe that we need to then, of course, vitamin, as I mentioned before. But finally, let me just say to all my brothers and sisters out there, we are a very fortunate people. I think God has been very good to Grenada in many respects. We have gone through so many challenges in the past, but the only country in the region that have gone through so many hurricanes with total disaster, gone through a revolution, we've gone through economic disasters, and recovered and pointing the way forward and doing what we are. Or people have been shown to be highly educated in many respects. So I think as a country, we got to feel thankful to our God and the people as a whole for coming to terms with the problems that we've had and uniting our effort. And I asked the nation over and over this time, let us drop the little differences that we have, because we'd always have that. That's not unique to Grenada. I've told my political colleagues, my own party supporters, and my opponent, write down the score, keep the scores. Don't. The time will come, then you will make the points that you have against the government, and I am keeping my scores too. The time will come, I would say what I think my opponent may have not done or done during a particular time. But that's not the time for this. The religious community, all Adventists, Baptists, Pentecostal, Catholics, everybody, one hand together, and the business community as a whole, all of us, joining hands. Everyone, let's continue to build our country and see that we get back to where we were. 2019, we don't have those numbers again yet. Only 1 month in this year, we have seen the revenue similar to what it was in 2019. That was August. And we have not seen those numbers again for a while. And I don't expect it with a spike in August. September numbers will definitely not be as 2019. So let's continue to work together. And to my friends in the diaspora, thank you all. And I hope that we can keep this thing. I think a session like this, press secretary, we can do that every quarter. And next time, I promise you, 3 hours, not 2. Okay? We might not force Dr. Donald because hopefully it will not be health will not be the major issue, we hope, and therefore we have other persons here with us on this important. But thank you all, and have a pleasant good evening, everybody.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and I certainly agree. And the more frequent we have it, probably we won't need to stay as long. So before we ask Mr. Martin Scott to send us off in prayer, I just want to end by saying thank you to our partners this afternoon. First and foremost, the GIS production team, who's here in studio and have facilitated this virtual engagement. Thank you so much. To the radio stations in Grenada, Real FM, CRFM, Sister Al Radio, and also Mikey Live for streaming on Facebook. In the US, as I mentioned at the start, we had a number of stations, but I want to mention you again just to say thank you. We Noise FM, Crossroad Family Radio, New Radio, and J Wonder FM. We also had Ride Along and Diaspora Matters on the Facebook platform. In the UK, we had Unique Radio and Colorful Radio. Thank you so much for joining this broadcast. And in Canada, we had Caribbean Vibrations on. Thank you so much to everyone who participated. It was certainly a pleasure being here with you this afternoon. If you have any additional feedback, be sure to get in touch with your embassies or consular offices. There is the Grenada donation table on Facebook. You can check in there. And also the Ministry of Health has a Facebook page. Information is routinely posted there, so you can check that as well. Thank you so much again. Mr. Scott, can you send us off now with closing words of prayer? Okay, it seems that
he's lost. He's not seeing the video.
Okay, but can
he's
you hear?
on, but we can't hear.
Okay, so Nimrod, I guess by virtue of being his nephew and the one who suggested, it falls to you.
That look like Pastor Nimrod?
Thank you, Doc. I guess you did me, right? Heaven and eternal Father, Lord God, we thank you for bringing us together again as a nation and hearing the concerns and all that is facing our beautiful nation, our trial island nation of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martin. Father God, I thank you, Lord, and I pray, Lord, that whatever we got here today, it would be cherished, and that you allow it to manifest within us, and that we can do what we have to do to continue the job that's been done so that our island, our tri-island state will come out on the better end of this. Lord, even as the science tell us that this virus and this disease is going to be with us for a while until we get it under total control. I pray, Lord, that you may guide us all so that we continue to make the right decision, Lord. Bless our leaders as make the tough decisions, because you know tough decisions are not easy. Father, I pray, Lord, that you may take us all back home safely. Even most of us were online, probably at home, but some of us were probably visiting friends and relatives. I pray, Lord, that you may continue to guide us, bless us, and I pray, Lord, that you may continue to bless those of us that are in a position so that we can continue with the much needed donation for a beautiful state. Thank you, Jesus, in Christ's name.
Amen. Thank you again. And with that, we come to the end of this virtual engagement that was facilitated by Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, and of course with support from the Medical Director at the General Hospital, Dr. Taisha Donald, and Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Good afternoon to those in the US and Canada, and good night to those of you in the UK. Until next time, please continue to be safe.